Oh, we're going live streaming. It's fun. Chris here, once again, broadcasting live streaming from the Atlantic Canada Solar Summit at the Halifax Convention Center with yet another very interesting guest Arash Yazdani from PRI Engineering.
Pleasure to be here, man.
Thank you for joining. So tell us, PR Engineering, where do you come into the whole solar mix?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm a geostructural engineer, also the founder of PRI Engineering. We specialize in designing foundations for ground mount systems,
Okay.
typically on the utility scale, but we've done very, very small projects in the past and done very, very large projects. We work as far north as the Arctic Circle and as far south as the Caribbean.
Oh, wow.
Sure, you can imagine which one of those are more enjoyable to go to.
Yeah, for sure.
But where do we get involved? So we get involved at any stage, really. We could get involved. We actually have a project here in Nova Scotia where we're actively involved at a feasibility stage. So looking at the existing site and determining potential risks or concerns related to foundation design,
Okay.
providing very high level recommendations based on available information. This is an old industrial site that there's lots of geotechnical data already, so we're able to use that information, did a site visit. We'll prepare a report with a very high level recommendation, suggested next steps in order to refine those recommendations. So we could do something like that at the early stage. We've even at the early stage we've done other studies where we are looking at optimal location of the array based on ground conditions,
Okay.
just from visual observations. There's a lot of kind of clues as to what could be buried underground, nearby site, on site, at surface. And, some of those can kind of trigger red flags that, may suggest, don't do this or don't do that or whatever. From there, we typically get involved in preliminary feasibility, like preliminary geotechnical investigations, which involves advancing boreholes or excavating test pits to determine the subsurface profile. What's in the ground, what's the composition, what's the strength,
Right.
what are all the different soil properties that will then eventually get fed into a foundation design.
Right. Yeah. You got to think about all that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Some projects you guys have been a part of across the country?
So yeah, a couple projects. Here in Atlantic, Canada, our most proud project would be Sunbank Solar project in Summerside, PEI. It's the
Okay.
largest utility scale project in Atlantic, Canada. So I was the foundation engineer of record for that. We had a bit of a more unique foundation design. We did a driven round HSS, hollow structural section. Most racking systems kind of trend towards using a driven W section. There was some technical advantages for the round HSS that allowed us to reduce the embedment depth of the pile.
Okay. So
Which-
these layman's terms for me, these are ways to get into the ground.
Ways to get in the ground,
Yeah.
and from a developer or contractor standpoint, less depth in the ground
Right.
means less steel, means less cost, means less headaches,
Right.
less things can go wrong. The shallower depth you got to go into the ground, the less the risk there is.
Right. I get that. It's like building a fence at my house. I didn't want to go too deep in case I hit something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very cool. How do you find, in my experience with ground mounts, they can be pricey. Have the costs come down similarly to the rest of solar with ground mounts? I know there's a lot of cost with the structure and concrete and things
Yep.
like that.
Yeah, so the geotechnical investigation, the pre-production testing, all the design work that we do, we kind of try to we suggest it's like an investment into actually potentially saving a cost down the road.
Right.
So on a utility scale, you're reaching a economy of scale. If you're optimizing that foundation and reducing its depth by a foot, half a meter, maybe a meter, that's a huge cost savings when you multiply it by 5,000 foundations.
Totally.
We worked on a project in Alberta. There was 125,000 foundations.
Wow.
So if you can reduce that by half a meter or, whatever, certain embedment depth, that's a huge cost savings.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so, at that scale, there's a lot that can be saved. The other thing that you're saving when you're doing this type of work is you're getting an understanding of what is the actual constructability of the foundation.
Mm,
So learning what won't work, what will work, so that when you go and do it 125,000 times,
yeah.
half of them aren't going unsuccessful because you're not sure what the
Yeah.
methodology and
Yeah.
equipment you need to
Totally.
use. So that will help keep the cost down because it reduces remediation costs.
Right. It's
Um,
all that pre-work is so important, right?
exactly.
So
Exactly.
PRI engineering is just the engineering of these structures, not the install.
Not the install. No.
Okay, right. So that's where you
We-
work with a partner, you
We work with a
design it.
partner. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. We always have a subcontractor
Okay.
that it deals with the actual pile installation.
Yeah.
We prescribe a program, we give it to the contractor, they execute it. We're there monitoring, taking notes about what is working, what's not working, instructing them to when things that are unexpected come up to how to troubleshoot that.
Right.
And then we do axial pull testing. So we actually take a hydraulic jack and
Yeah.
pull up on the pile to see how strong it is.
Oh, okay. Just a good
That's-
old test.
Good old test. I mean, you can do calculations all day long,
Yeah.
but you can't debate a test.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. How long has PRI been around?
So we were established in 2019,
Okay.
and so we started in just with an office. Actually, we started remote, 3 employees. So we're now in 2 offices in Ontario, Lindsay, Mississauga, and then we have an office in Calgary. And we got some admirations to hopefully grow the business elsewhere in Canada.
Yeah. And the
Potentially
Caribbean.
potentially here in Atlantic Canada, maybe
Yeah.
even a Caribbean office.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Maybe that's the beach. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we're up to 30 employees now.
Okay, well, congrats on all that success. How have you seen in your 5 years with PRI? How have you seen, like when you came in, was this obviously this has been happening, but did you find that there was a real opportunity to get in and help in this way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, about 70% of our revenue comes from designing solar mounting structures. The other 30% is what I call the infrastructure business, roads, bridges, more traditional
okay.
civil
Yeah.
engineering projects. A number of us used to work for a very large firm, WSP. We saw myself. I saw a huge opportunity. I saw the growing scale of the industry here in Canada and the U.S. because we do work across North America, as I mentioned, and the U.S. is a very, very, very large market for us. Saw the opportunity to really leverage this growing industry, have a niche offering that not many others are offering
Yeah.
in North America, the
Yeah.
world. It's a pretty small network, and with that, we've definitely seen a lot of growth, and we're seeing even more growth, like in terms of the industry and its understanding of what the importance of this is,
Right.
which is obviously only in our benefit.
Totally. Well, and there's tons of engineering firms, but I'm not an engineer even close to it, but obviously there's a niche, a specialization that goes when it comes to solar because you've got wind, you've got all these other things that you must consider, correct?
Yeah, so solar mounting structures are different than typical foundation design because in a typical foundation, you have a lot of dead loads. So you got the weight of the bricks, the steel, and all that's pushing down on the
Right.
foundation.
Okay.
With a solar mounting structure, there's not a lot of weight to it.
Mm-hmm.
So the environmental forces, the wind that you mentioned, the snow,
Right.
and even frost acting on the foundations is actually the governing load.
Oh, okay.
And that's why it's a different design, especially in northern climates where you have frost uplift acting on a foundation can wreak havoc.
Like how does that? I'm picturing frost. So foundation gets covered in frost.
So think about it this way. So you get the development of what's called ad freeze. So when it's a really, really cold day and you take your tongue and you stick it on a metal
Right.
pole,
Christmas Story movie. Yeah, you get stuck there.
and it's stuck.
Yeah.
So that's because of adhesion. So that's
Okay.
like ad freeze. So that's the same bond that develops, or similar bond that develops between the frozen soil and the steel pile or
Oh,
the
no
concrete
way.
pile.
Okay.
So basically, what's happening is the pores of the soil fill with water,
Right.
and then it freezes. And when it freezes, water expands by 9%, and that pressure puts
Oh,
pressure
wow.
upward on the
Would have
foundation
never
and
thought
jacks
of
it
it.
out of the ground.
Right. Wow. So yeah, that's why you need an engineering company to look at all this
So
stuff.
we like to think so.
Yeah, for sure. That's very cool. Yeah, I mean, events like this, how's it been going for you? At the a lot of good conversations.
Yeah, a lot of great conversations. We had a talk this morning actually that like showcased some of the
Okay.
technologies at the Sunbank project. That was very successful. We've got a good clientele here in Halifax. It's really exciting that what is happening here in Nova Scotia. Kudos to the progressive conservative government here that is pushing forward with the needed changes to the electricity grid and
Yeah,
backfilling the old coal power
yeah,
plants
yeah.
with some renewable energy. And there's lots of really smart developers and contractors out here doing awesome work that we're actively working with, and
Yeah, great.
it's great to see.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And these events are so important to just get everybody in the same room and have that face-to-face conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Arashi Asdani from PRI Engineering on the live stream of the podcast today. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for having me.
Killed it, buddy. Awesome.